Welcome, Dr. Sonia Toledo. I am so excited to have you here today. I'm really excited because of two things. One is the important work that you're doing in the world with dignity of children,
Yes.
and you happen to have your doctorate in social or in emotional intelligence.
Intelligence.
And so I would love to feature you and hear about your wisdom that you have to share with us. And I'm going to highlight you.
Thank you.
Tell us about who you are and what you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and it's exciting to just talk about what I've done. I have my doctorate in education with a focus on emotional intelligence and in the after school world as well as in the education system. I founded Dignity of Children in 2008, and that was clearly intentionally to support people who work with children in understanding the foundation of child development, of children's developmental needs, the safety, all of those things that anybody who works with a child needs to know. So we started in 2008 training educators and staff in after school programs in New York City. That's been my journey, and I've learned a lot about who are we as leaders in the classroom and as leaders in the institutions that cultivate children's learning. So I'm excited to share that with you, and some personal stuff too.
It's so relevant. It's so important because one of the things that has come up in our conversations is recognizing that we really do have to start with ourselves.
Mhm.
If we want to facilitate transformation in the world, which it calls out for, it's just screaming for transformation.
Yes.
Where do we begin? We begin with ourselves. And I'd love if you could just speak to the power of transformation, how you think about it, how do you facilitate it,
Mhm.
and how does it show up in your world?
Wow. So transformation for me is really a space of transforming an environment or people or me. It's a lifelong journey. I want to start that way. So I know that I found that my purpose was transforming educational environments for children to thrive. Right. So it's not just learn for them to have like the curiosity of learning, the desire to learn, the
Right.
the
Yeah.
this zest to like, I want to know more about this. So in having young people feel that way, we need to transform how we're teaching them. I feel that that's my mission in life, my purpose in life.
To help
And
educators transform their learning environments
yes,
and their
yeah,
learning modalities, it
and
sounds
their
like.
learning modalities. So, today in 21st century, thank God we have technology that helps us connect from all over the world. So that's an opportunity that we could bring the world to the classroom with our young people. That's number one. And then we have access to so much information on the web that we could bring more details to our young people in the classroom. But most importantly is the emotional intelligence that we bring into the space, the emotional relationships and the connections that we have with our young people. The first thing I want to start with is really believing, starting with trusting that our young people have great ideas and solutions for our world
Ooh,
today. So if
wow.
we treat them like if they already have these potentials, starts showing up. I mean, I could really get into the emotional environment, how one could feel very excited and and just says like, oh yes, I can, or totally depleted and inferior and being inferior to others and comparing and feeling not worthy enough. How an adult is speaking to me. I have to say my story, this is why I do what I do, from my own personal story
Oh,
and
please.
my story of my son. So I was diagnosed with learning disability in my um, all through grade school. I struggled academically, but it wasn't the actual process of the academic that I struggled with much, because I graduated from high school when at age I didn't get left back or anything. I used to get go to resource, room and get pulled out, and always in the, batches. I was always in the last batch because I didn't read as well as the people before me, etc. All of those things made an impact with my self-worth and my self-esteem and my value. So that's what I struggled with the most, not necessarily with the educational part, because I had the desire to learn. So I would try it. I would keep doing it. I would keep reading. I would keep writing, and eventually I got my PhD. So it's not that my capacity was limited. The environment limited me from being my full capacity.
And what kind of messages were coming through to you, about your own self-worth and the way that you approached
Yes.
education as a result of that?
Yeah, the messages, we tend to, and I'm saying we as a society, as a community, when we look at young people and we're measuring them in specific hard skills, which I could say in my case was writing. So writing is my, the area where I struggle the most. When I think and write, the connection sometimes is like totally off. I may be thinking what I want to write, but when I put it on paper, it actually is not grammatically correct, or I get stuck on spelling and the connection between, I remember having like want. I couldn't make the connection of what the sound was with the actual letter, where other people just automatically, oh, want is an everyday word. You need to know how it looks, and spell it. Well, I needed to find some other ways to remember how to spell want, because I could not do it like we were taught with phonics and and sounds, because the sounds did not make the connections with the actual writing. So I'm just explaining a little bit of how my dyslexia works for me. So it just doesn't make an automatic connection. So I have to find another way to remember how to write.
Which is then part of what puts it in the strength of maybe the right brain, which is the different thinking. And so you want the access of the imagistic creative, which is part of your strength, and yet it has to be married into that logical left brain, which is get the work done and all of that.
And I love that you shared the left brain and the right brain, because I think if we think about most of our young people who have learning disabilities, they learn how to use both sides of the brains very strategically, because I'm not learning the way the traditional learning style is. I'm learning a different way. And let me just give you an example. When I went to England, I'm a driver. I learned how to drive on a stick in England. So I went to England, and I remember my colleague that we were there in business, she got on behind the wheel and she was freaking out because everything was in the total opposite of what we're used to right here in America. So, you're driving the opposite side, you're on the opposite side of the seat. All of the gears are on the opposite side. So all I needed to do was actually think about, because I needed to think about how to drive anyway when I was on the left side, right? Driving on the right side. So I just was able to pick up driving on the opposite side so quickly, because this is the practice that I do anyway. I have to think about which side I'm driving in, regardless.
It's such a profound analogy, because that ability to adapt and that ability to be able to use both the right and the left in our educational processes opens up the door to so much more possibilities, because we can think imagistically, we can imagine, right? And so how do we facilitate that holistic approach? That's a very very key part that we're talking about here. And I wonder how you go about it, and both
Well,
personally and in your work professionally.
I could say that now I feel very successful in how I process my learning and how I cultivate my opportunity to understand and write, because I have gone through so much challenges. But let me go back a little bit. When you asked me what were some of the challenges, is that teachers were asking me to perform a certain way. And they were saying, do it in a certain procedure, in a certain way. And I couldn't do it that way. So as soon as I was known as, oh, you can't do it that way, I then absorbed that as I'm not enough, because I couldn't do it the way I was told to do it. And I'm kind of breaking it down because I want us to understand that when we teach children and we tell children, do it this way, and they actually don't follow your instructions or the actual method that you're teaching them, it doesn't mean that they're not smart. It doesn't mean that they can't. It just means we need to change our approach on teaching, because there are different ways on how we learn. My passion about this is that there is a connection on who I am as a learner and my emotional state of being, right? So if I'm feeling good about myself, I'm feeling brilliant, like I'm a pretty smart girl, right? Women, I behave that way.
Self-esteem, our
I
messages,
show
our
up.
internal messages make
Yes.
such a difference.
Yes, I show up brilliant. I show up excited and energized and engaged in my learning. But when I'm told that I'm lacking, or I'm not enough, or I should be doing something that my peers are doing, then my whole environment shows up in a, like, I'm afraid to do that because I'm going to do it and it's going to be wrong, and somebody's going to tell me that I'm wrong, or that I'm not enough, or that I'm shortchanged. And then that becomes, I mean, even as an adult, it was demonstrated for me in my life.
In what way?
Short story, I had a position, I had a very important, what you would call a high level position, a vice president in a company. And I shared that I had a learning disability with a colleague, and they told my CEO, and I was pretty much chastised. I was told that I was incapable, that I lied on my application, and that I need to find another job because this position was not meant for someone with a disability. So you know that this was a whirlwind. So the whirlwind was, they realized their fault, because this is a huge lawsuit. I stood in the position for 2 years because I was very determined that one, no one was going to push me out because of my disability. I wanted to demonstrate that I could still leave a footprint in this position, even though I was told I was insufficient, incapable. And so for 2 years, I dealt with the feeling of the anxiety of even writing an email was so overwhelming. The anxiety of making sure that everything was perfect, because if I sent out one piece of document with grammar mistakes, I was going to be chastised. So I also behaved that way. I behaved inferior. I behaved incapable. So I made more mistakes.
Right,
I
because
had more
those messages
anxiety.
compound, and the more that we tell ourselves negative messages, the more that then we get uptight.
Yes.
It restricts the flow. It really is a huge piece of the puzzle.
And I want to break that down, because in the space of professionalism and leadership, when we look at our colleagues or even look at our children with these, we judge them on their capacity.
Thinking judgmental eyes.
Judgmental, right. We automatically create a very tense environment. We may not even have to say it, but just, just the way we respond to mistakes or difference. We automatically create a very intense environment of inferiority, of levels. And I really feel that our education system is designed that way too.
The
It's
judgment
designed to
phase.
have people feel like they're either in level 4, level 3, or level 2, or level 1, or, like it just puts so much stress. I'm not saying let's not take a test. I'm saying let's teach how to take a test with self-worth. The emotional intelligence that comes with that is that our adults are recognizing how I'm making a young person feel when they are learning. Because if you
Mm.
think about it, everything is a learning process.
Right. And when we
Everything.
realize that we as adults are still learning, we would want to still be learning. That's life. That's
Yes.
evolution. You keep on learning. Then it lets us all to be more compassionate with one another
Yes. Yes.
and ourselves.
Yes. So I have to say, moving fast forward, I successfully completed the position, but I knew that that experience was for me. I needed to experience that situation for me to understand how I got to where I'm at today. Because still as an adult, I'm operating inferior. I'm operating low self-worth. I'm operating, not at my fullest potential
Well,
because
certainly.
I had all of these messages in my mind of people saying that I'm not enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not this enough. So you actually behave that way when we create environments for our young people that helps them believe that they are brilliant, that they have capacity to imagine and come up with brilliant ideas and build on their learning. Like, be self-directed in what they want to learn, but also that they are determined to learn something because they're intrigued about that topic. That topic matters to them. It then creates a whole different person. You're creating people who are brilliant. You're creating people who are idea generators. You're creating people who are innovators. When we look at our shortcomings or our children's shortcomings, then we're kind of suppressing them from seeing their full potential.
I so appreciate your willingness to share on such a personal level because it's certainly a story of transformation. And as you show up like Dr. Toledo, who's, so aware and such a mover and shaker in the world. I mean, you have definitely gone through a lot of transformation from those earlier messages, and you have a lot to speak about that process. And I just would love for you to continue to share about how do we facilitate it in ourselves and others, because
Mhm.
is it just like, you can do it, or,
Right.
it's deeper than that.
Yes, absolutely. I had the privilege of doing my dissertation on the correlation between emotional intelligence and workplace stress. We perceive stress
Mhm.
according to our emotional intelligence. So if you have high emotional intelligence, the results were that there is a negative correlation, right? So if you have high emotional intelligence, your perceived stress is low, because we're most likely feel like, okay, I see the problem, I understand that there's a challenge, and I'm going to look for the solution, and I'm going to work towards the solution. When you have low emotional intelligence, your perceived stress is higher because your emotional intelligence doesn't allow you to feel like you can handle the problem, or you can find a solution for it, or it looks like total, like, oh, this is impossible, I can't pass this. So the correlation between emotional intelligence and workplace stress is clearly correlated, high, low. So here
Wow,
we are in the
that's huge.
workplace, especially when we see our colleagues and we interact with our colleagues and we see their stress level is high. I'm not going to focus and be reactive towards that person. My emotional intelligence is high enough to understand, okay, that person right there is struggling because they perceive stress very high. Where I want to work with them is on their emotional intelligence, on
Mm.
their sense of worth, on their sense of consciousness, their
And how
self-control.
how do you do that kind of work? What is the essence of it? What are the keys?
Well, one, I really want to emphasize this is a study that has been, I would say the last 2 decades have been a much more like in-depth understanding what is emotional intelligence. Daniel Goldman, created the emotional intelligence book, and it's been like in so many studies in education in the corporate world, and basically has been spoken of as the new 21st century skills for the workplace. And why is because now we're talking about the hard skills are necessary, but more importantly, the soft skills is necessary. And what we call soft skills is the ability of building relationships, effective relationships, working relationships,
Mm.
working as a team collaboratively, as well as understanding my own self-control. So my control is I'm controlling my emotions according to the environment that I'm in, not necessarily controlling my environment. It's a difference. I'm self-control versus me controlling my environment.
Big
The other
difference.
piece is well-being. Well-being is critical in our emotional intelligence. We need to understand that if anything in my personal world is off, like my health, my physical health, like for example, I hurt my knee about 2 years ago in a hike. And I realized that if I don't physically take care of myself, I am not my best person when I go to work.
As is
I,
true for all of us.
Right, we get more snappy, we're very reactive, we're not paying attention to others because I'm paying attention to my pains and aches. That's just one example of well-being. Of course, eating right, making sure that you have your meditation is a big part of my life. And of course, starting meditation in my adult life is when I realized how much I was able to develop my sense of self-worth and awareness in my environment because I'm doing that for myself. I'm not doing it for anyone else. Does that make
Wow,
sense?
that's a really powerful statement. So it was the going within, making the time to be with your inner spirit that really allowed it to show up differently in a more empowering way in the world.
Yes.
That's interesting. So uniting body, mind, spirit
Mhm.
it personally in order to facilitate that for others.
Yeah. And people is like, oh, I'm going to go to work and work hard on my work. It's like, no, work hard on yourself. Work hard on
Mhm.
yourself, because then the work becomes easier because you're able to manage and be with that work much more fluidly than rigidly. Your body, your mind, and your soul and your spirit are not in alignment of the work that you're doing. Some of us go to work every day with being anxious at work, don't like my supervisor, don't like the work, I have too much of a travel, I don't like what I do. I'm like, okay, so the world around you is definitely not in alignment with you. So first find out who you are, so then you could create the environments that you want. And it's all in perspective, right? Because remember, high emotional intelligence, low work stress. So if I have high emotional intelligence, you know what? I may not be in alignment with my supervisor's way of doing things, but I am not allowing her energy or his energy to trigger me anymore
That's
because I
the key.
know my sense of
Okay.
worth,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not going to allow that to be a trigger for me because I'm working on myself to understand why is that a trigger for me. The trigger of the supervisor is not the supervisor, it's you.
That's the key, right? And
You're
so
the one that's
often we're
getting
like,
triggered.
but we
Yes,
really have these fingers coming right back. And that's the critical piece, right?
it's all the critical piece. And, the more we work on ourselves, it allows us to really be in relationships with people effectively, right? We have this thing is like, I don't like you. It's okay. I may not like your way of being or some of your characters, but I still got to work with you. And we're still here to accomplish something together. So let me focus on that versus your characteristics, because your characteristics really doesn't have anything to do with me. Um, what I have to do with you is accomplish X, Y, and Z. So let's accomplish X, Y, and Z by me being present to what we need to accomplish versus my my opinion of someone's values or morals. And the more we get triggered by people, the more we go inside. Why? Like, we attract certain things because we need to resolve some stuff. Now I'm getting a little deeper. We need to resolve some deeper stuff. And this is why these certain personalities we keep attracting, because we need to resolve it.
Right. And when we resolve it within, it will stop showing up as
It will stop showing up.
Wow.
You know how you get this, and I know we all know this type of person that's constantly in the, if a glass is half empty, I could see the speck on your shirt, like always looking for what's wrong. That's exactly what they find. They find a world of what's wrong.
Right.
The world is wrong.
And it can be just through habits, through our words, without even realizing it. Yeah. So that awareness is such a critical piece.
And you get to choose too, socially, who is good for you, right? Because some people that we have in our circle may not be the right person for us, because that person doesn't bring out the best in us, it brings the worst in us, right? So we have these relationships that are not supportive of your true self. So that's another piece of emotional intelligence that takes some work. It really takes some work. And awareness, self-awareness and awareness, period, is one of the biggest pieces. And I'm not saying that I have a perfect life, but if I could wake up every morning and feel grateful for what I have and the life that I'm leading, now I know I'm ready to give to someone else. And service is what my world is about. My life is about serving environments where children are thriving. That's where I want to be in service. So
let's talk about that more, because I mean, just the name of your company, the dignity of children, that's a powerful word right there. It would be interesting to hear why you chose the dignity and how it is that we relate to that dignity, because that's the transformative agent in so many ways, when we can understand and relate to the dignity in one another, and definitely intentionally do that with children.
I designed the name of the company years ago, and I was very clear that is the dignity of children, not for children, because we're not giving dignity to children. Children already have dignity.
Definitely.
So I remember having a real clear conversation with myself about how this name was going to show up, because the dignity of children is what we want to preserve, what is what we want to bring up to the surface. Our children already have dignity, and preserving our children's dignity, we then get to behave as adults in a certain way to have that dignity present in our kids.
How do you facilitate that for adults and educators?
We have a program. It's a digital curriculum. It's called Ideas Empowered by Youth. So basically what we're creating is a pathway for young people to identify what matters to them in the world, right? So as young as kindergarten, what matters to them, let's look at where we are today. In today's world, everything around us is telling us there's something wrong. Our young people are seeing it too. Let's not forget, they see everything we see. Their interpretation is different from ours, right? So allowing young people to actually go into a world perspective and look at areas in the world that matters to them. And this is very important, right? And it comes from, again, my experience. Some of our young people are going through struggles and adversities in their lives. And we could either focus on that struggle and adversity as like, oh, you're doomed because you come from this neighborhood, this zip code, or this family, or you had all these tragedies and these traumas. Or we could look at how could you be in service around something that you care about. Our adversity could be transformed into action, into let me make a difference for others. And in that, I start healing. So I really feel that the first conversation is just allowing our young people to speak and express what is going on. How do they see the world? What is going on in their world that they feel that that one matters to them and that they want to make a difference in. Now they're intrigued. There's like oh, wait a minute. I want to know more about this. Let's go into a deep dive into this particular topic. And I'm going to tell you right now, with our programs, we've served over 4,000 young people, and the majority of our young people, I would say close to half or more, pick mental health. Why? Because our young people are struggling with social issues, with self-esteem, with mental health is huge in our population of young people. So they choose mental health in an area to make a difference because they're challenged with it themselves.
And then working on it helps to bring their own healing.
And working on it supports the process of healing. And at the same time, learning, academics, community. So looking at the world from a wide perspective and bringing it down to a local perspective is what we have them, the journey that we have the young people go through. So now where could I make a difference in my very own community? And they then do projects. They do, they do service projects. They do peer education. They do businesses. They create something that really puts them in service of others around something that matters to them. So Ideas Empowered by Youth is basically giving the opportunity for our young people to know that they could do something about their life today, their world today. They don't have to wait till after they finish college to then figure out what they're going to do. They could start making a difference today. And with that, all of these skills get developed, right? Because naturally, you have to work as a team. So you're developing social skills. You have to be self-aware of what you want, and especially when you start thinking about, oh, I really care about this. This may be my purpose. I want to develop myself in order for me to keep going in this path. We want to give our young people hope in that they could create a path to not only make their livelihood better, but to make other people's livelihood better. Let's just talk about social entrepreneurship. This may be a trigger for some people, but I'm thinking of Elon Musk. Elon Musk years ago started this idea that he's going to do electric cars. We may not look at it as a social entrepreneur, but he was thinking about the problem of our Earth. Even though there's more problems that are a different problem is arising because of the electric cars. Now everybody's doing electric cars. But the whole thing is he's in the solution base off of a problem. He found a solution off of a problem. Now he's a millionaire. We may look at him totally different, but he's had over 20 years of trying to figure this problem out. And now the world is seeing it. And the reason I bring him up is because if you look at his history, he didn't have a straight shoot all the way up to millionaire. He had some struggles, but he's like, I want to solve that problem. I want to solve that problem. I want to solve that problem. He wasn't given anything. He just had his ideas, his determination, his clarity, and he kept it moving.
And so I hear that you are bringing that in through the ideas empowered by youth, that you are empowering. What ideas do you carry? What action can you have on that idea? Let us believe in you. Let us, give you a system of support around actualizing your ideas. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so powerful.
We have to create a different environment for our kids in order for that to happen.
And how would you name that environment?
A self-directed, child-centered environment, self-directed learning environment where us as educators and parents and teachers, we are actually being that support and resource person and guider and coach versus a teacher. Here, this is what you need to learn. It's more like, what are your ideas? What are you thinking about? And let me support you in getting the information you need to keep moving your idea forward.
And really deeply believing that their ideas are valuable. And yes, we want to hear them.
Yes.
Let it come out. Don't instead of sit down, be quiet. No, stand up, speak up.
Yes.
Let's listen.
Yes. Oh, and I just want to bring up the value of having more dialogue with our kids. Like, let's not be afraid to have conversations, to really hear what our kids are thinking about the world. And that's where I would start. Let's have conversations about world issues. What are they seeing? What are they feeling? I mean, you may not have asked them what matters to them. So you don't know. So we need to have more conversations, dialogue, just talking. And I have to say, that's literacy. That's literacy. Conversations where I'm able to have a conversation with an adult or with my peers and really talk and listen to others, and then have an opinion, and then express myself, and then listen to somebody else and interpret it or reflect on what we just experienced. That's literacy.
And writing, yes.
And
it
writing.
really reflects on how you can organize your thoughts, the desire to express them.
And put it on paper.
Yeah.
Right. There's a process to all of that. So I really feel the environment of teaching has to shift, because we need to create an environment where learning is, I look at it, now that I have my PhD, I was like, I can't even imagine not learning every day. Every day I want to be able to learn something new. Or for me, learning is, we have a problem in front of us, figuring out this problem, constantly dissecting it and talking about it and figuring out how we're going to get to the other side of it is part of growth. And yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure some people listening are going to want to follow you, wanting to get involved. How would you make an invitation into knowing more about you and the work that your team is doing in the world?
Well, first you could check out our website, dignityofchildren.com. There you will see, you will understand more about the curriculum, Ideas Empowered by Youth. We also are looking at, we have an ebook for you, by the way. What we're doing is we're shortening my dissertation on emotional intelligence and workplace stress to be more of like a short guide to support yourself in emotional intelligence. So we're going to have a quick ebook for everyone who's listening today, and you get that ebook from,
I'm
from
excited for
this
myself. I want
from this
that.
session. But most importantly, you could also schedule a time to just meet with me. We want the world to be the classroom. So in order for the world to be the classroom, professionals, experts, everyone has an opportunity to teach our young people. So there's always an opportunity to get engaged with us with this project by being a mentor, being a judge, being an advisor, being a teacher. If you have a special skill that you want to teach, we could put that in place. So we're always looking for professionals and experts out there to help us in this process. Because of technology, it doesn't matter where you are, you could always make a contribution to our young people. So that's one way. Another way is if you have an educational environment that you want support in how to transform it. So it could be a self-directed learning environment for our young people. Hit me up so we could sit down and talk.
And I just testify because in our conversations, I have found so much empowerment just through the shared dialogue and allowing it to flow and emerge. And I feel like it's invited out of me rather than just told to me. And I just acknowledge you for that talent and skill and desire, because you have a lot of wisdom, and I feel the generosity and your spirit of sharing it. And I just sing your kudos, sing your praises, and give you kudos for it.
Thank you. I feel like I have a knack on how to break it down because of my experience. And I'm able to reflect back on that experience. Like, this is what was going on with me. It was not the fact that somebody treated me horrible. I was feeling horrible and I acted out that way.
Right. And then we self-perpetuate it.
And then it would perpetuate. And then I kept having more of these experiences. It's like, oh, you can't write. Or look, you made a mistake. Or God forbid if somebody pointed something out on social media that I like wrote something wrong or put the wrong word, and people would laugh at me and stuff. And I was like, oh, like, well, no. It's like, hey, I did it again. Let me go fix it. So my whole perspective changed and how stressful my life was, because I had this minor deficiency. It's not even a deficiency. I just see things differently.
That's a profound statement. Did you hear that shift? It's not a deficiency. I see things differently. And each of us are individuals coming with our own perspective, our own journey, our own soulful path. And when we can honor that and hear that in one another's journeys and bring kindness and compassion to the journey, then it does create more enthusiasm for the learning and an invitation into the learning.
And most of all, if I could have that compassion for myself.
That's a key part, isn't it?
That's why emotional intelligence is so powerful in any workplace, but most importantly in our education environments. Because if I could have compassion for myself, if I could learn what are the places that I need more nurturing. I need to nurture myself here more, like I said, the well-being. Then socially, I could navigate my world socially much more fluently because I know who I am in the world, right? It's when we're not feeling good about ourselves that socially becomes a very complex interaction, because we're either feeling attacked or we're feeling, inferior. And then, so we have these conflicts around us. But socially, it's very important. Self-control. Self-control is not about me controlling somebody else. It's about me being aware of my reactions and my approach to life.